Since the time Portugal pushed the Moors far from its border, an undercurrent of tension has persisted between Portugal and Spain. The eagerness of both countries to gain insight into the world resulted in intense envy and hostility. Barry Hatton, in his book The Portuguese, wrote, "Portugal has two neighbours, the Atlantic and Spain. One of them viewed as a risky prospect, treacherous and dangerous, and the other was wet." During the 20th century, leaders Francisco Franco of Spain and Antonio Salazar of Portugal embraced right-wing authoritarianism, emphasizing nationalism, traditionalism, and anti-communism. Their goal: establish autocratic regimes, preserving traditional values while quelling dissent. During a critical historical phase encompassing the Spanish Civil War, World War II, and its aftermath, Portugal and Spain became enmeshed in the complexities of authoritarianism. Despite historical differences, leaders of these nations found themselves in a situation where cooperation was necessary. With the occurrence of the Great War and the Great Depression of 1929, a frail band of extremists rose to power. Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, and Salazar all have thing in common: they are dictators. They may like or despise each other, but they were the new political stage of Europe, and having them together brought more good than bad.
O trabalho nacional. Glória à Armada Portuguesa. Glória a Portugal. Quem não é patriota não pode ser considerado português.
Salazar, a pro-monarchist, conservative, and anti-communist, regarded Franco as a vital person to keep his government in power. It was undeniable that if the communists won the war, Portugal would never be stable again, so Portugal sent 18,000 volunteers from Portugal to join the rebel army and provided logistic support. After decades of tensions and divergences, Franco's victory in the Spanish Civil War brought with it the beginning of a new stage in Iberian relations, formally opened with the signing of the Portuguese-Spanish Treaty of Friendship and Non-Aggression, the Iberian Pact, that was signed in 1939. Although evident, the relationship between Salazar and Franco was notably strained. Salazar's official biographer wrote once, "Salazar used to write down all his important conversations, but I never came across any documents relating to his meetings with the Spanish leader." That can explain that the relationship between the two countries was pragmatic and time-dependent. Some historians argue that Salazar may have believed that strengthening his relations with Spain, Germany, and Italy may provide an alternative to the British ally. 1939 marked the beginning of a new phase in Iberian relations, in which the meetings between Franco and Salazar played a fundamental part. During a period when both dictatorships were trying to strengthen their control within their own countries and with the possibility of a new world war approaching, the Iberian states agreed to respect each other's borders and not support anyone who might attack the other side. However, following the conclusion of the Spanish Civil War and the eruption of the Second World War, Portugal found itself increasingly anxious about the prospect of a potential Spanish-German invasion. Simultaneously, Spain began to view Portugal as a possible threat, particularly if it were to align with the Allies, including their traditional ally, Great Britain. Following Portugal's fears, in the month of July 1940, fresh agreements were crafted, building upon the foundations of their prior accords. Salazar wasn't happy during his meeting with Franco. He wrote, "I couldn't sleep at all. They gave me the best room, undoubtedly, but it was a corner room with two windows, and underneath these was an intersection of two cobbled streets." This was largely due to the fact that the majority of the meetings occurred in border regions, situated within Spanish territory. To the outside world, Salazar tried to offer a positive view of Hispanic relations. He wrote in 1933, "Portugal and Spain are like two brothers, each possessing his own home in the peninsula, so close to each other that they can talk over the war, and even more friendly because each is independent and jealous of his autonomy." In matter of fact, the two leaders were of a different stamp. Franco, a soldier who had won power by the exercise of often brutal force, and Salazar, an academic who had risen to the top by cunning statecraft and dedication to his public duties. What they shared in common was deep-seated prudence and a powerful survival instinct. After the 1974 military coup, which stood Portuguese society on its head overnight, but cost only a handful of lives compared with the Spanish Civil War which slaughtered hundreds of thousands, Spaniards wondered out loud whether blood or water ran in Portuguese veins.